It's a changing world, and one of the things that help us understand the changing world is research. And so as churches have been struggling and families may be disconnected and sometimes drifting away from the church, we're kind of dealing with some of the questions of where do we go from here? And the Communio nationwide survey on faith and relationships really kind of points to the family decline and how it relates to faith decline in the United States. Actually, the survey has 3 key issues that are impacting our society today. Go to communio.org/study to download the nationwide study on faith and relationships.
The Eric Geiger Leadership Podcast is part of the Church Leaders Podcast Network, which is dedicated to resourcing leaders to face the complexities of ministry. The Church Leaders Podcast Network supports pastors and ministry leaders by challenging assumptions, providing insights, and offering practical steps that will help them navigate a variety of cultures and contexts. Learn more at ChurchLeaders.com/podcast network.
All right, welcome to the episode on the announcement. There's been months of planning, maybe years of planning, prayer, strategizing, and then here it is, the moment in which you let the church, the organization, the staff, key people know that a successor has been named, that there is a leadership transition that has been finalized. The baton has been handed off. Can you imagine running a really long race, but then dropping the baton handoff? I mean, this is the moment of transition. We want this moment to be special, significant. We want it to be a moment that marks not just the past and honors the past, but really is a beautiful moment towards the future. So in this episode, Kenton and I are going to talk about the moment of the announcement to 3 different groups of people at Mariners Church when the announcement happened in September of 2018. And I don't mean the announcement of Kenton announcing his departing from the role of senior pastor. That was January of 2018. But the announcement of a new leader, which was 9 months later. 9 months, like the amount of months it takes for a child to be developed in the womb, right. Kenton. That's how long it took. But the announcement was here. And so Kenton, he has a truism that he has used for many years, which is it takes a moment to make a moment. And so he thought about this strategically. So we're going to talk about 3 different moments. The moment where Kenton introduced me to the staff, the moment where I was introduced to the shepherding elders and the shepherding elder wives in our church. That was at a dinner party. And then the moment I was introduced to the church as a whole. And we'll see where this conversation goes. So Kenton, let's talk about the moment in Park City, Utah. Obviously our church is in Southern California, but there was an annual pastor retreat in Park City, Utah. You have planned this retreat. It's a lot of hang time, devotionals, and worship during the morning, but a lot of hang time and play time during the day. And then one evening, I fly to Park City with Kay and my daughters. You have the entire pastoral team at a home in Park City, Utah. They have no idea what's about to happen. Right. And you take over, and they have no idea. They haven't been told that on this retreat you're going to meet the next pastor.
That's right.
They have no idea. So tell us what happened. What were you thinking? You always take a moment to make a moment. So bring us into your genius.
So the idea behind the announcement to the staff is that it would be a hard transition. Not a soft one. And with the elders, a hard transition. But with the church, very soft and gentle. So
can I interrupt and ask, why did you, I mean, I like the language, and that's exactly what I experienced and felt here. It did feel like more of a build-up with the church,
right.
but with the staff for sure,
right.
It was like, boom.
Right.
What was the thinking on why hard for the staff and soft for the church?
So with the staff, anytime, just like you talked about, you loved the staff that you worked with in your previous job, and they were your staff.
Right.
And so this staff was a staff that I had built, and they were my staff. And they had to have a moment where it was, you're no longer my staff, meet your new boss. And that there wasn't any hand-holding. it needed to be just a hard line, real clear. This is now your boss, and everything has changed. And so that was the mindset with the staff. And so we took a moment, but it was hard, so that when you were introduced, you weren't introduced as, oh, here's, a friend, or here's, the senior pastor. This is your new boss, who is the senior pastor of Mariners Church.
Now, the word hard, you're saying because the transition was hard, but in your tone, you were visionary, exciting, loving. So it wasn't like, here's your new boss.
No. But
it was hard because, my gosh, I had a leader and a pastor, and now I have a different leader and pastor, and it happened that fast.
It did. And so, so it was, just so it was a hard moment.
Yeah,
it's a clear pass. It's just like we use the idea of a baton pass. You pass the baton and it's done. So for the staff, it was real clear. So the fun part of it was you said yes in June, and we had a retreat in July.
Right.
And so we had 45 pastors that were at it. So they were all the key ministry people. And then we also filmed it so that the people that didn't go, that, the rest of the staff actually were in a meeting. And so they got to see the moment that you were introduced. So what happened that I did is we were at Park City. We're at a person's home. 45 people are literally looking at me. And I remember talking to you, and I go, Eric, this could be so great. You just show up at Park City, and
it's the evening before dinner. So dinner has not yet been served.
Right. And I think you came in we were there one day. And so you came in like the second day, and we were going to be there 4 days. And you're like, what are you talking about? This is insane.
I thought it was crazy.
You did. And I go, no, this will work great, because the whole purpose of the retreat was relationship. And so what I did to make a moment is I got them together. We had a devotional, and then I talked to them about how Lori and I came to the decision where it was time, because we were in Park City when we decided it was time. And I came back in that fall, and I retold the story of how Lori and I had been praying, the elders have been praying. We decided it was time because it was time for the next generation to stand up. It was time for Kent and Lori to spend time with their grandkids. It was time for me to mentor and train next generation leaders and pastors. It was time. And so I told that story about how we had made that decision. And so for the staff, we introduced it to the church in January, but we did just what we said. The whole focus of the church was moving the mission forward, moving ministry forward. No one was aware of what was going on.
Yeah.
No one knew.
They didn't know where you were in the process.
They had no idea.
If it was 8 months away, 8 days away, they had no idea.
They had no idea. So they had no idea that we actually had a person who has accepted the job and who is the new senior pastor beginning in September. They had no clue. No one knew. And so they're sitting in there, and the staff is watching it, because we came up with some story that says we just want you to see it. And then what happened that the staff didn't know is, I can remember this, is you and your family walked in the back door. I'm talking to them.
Yeah, so I'm behind everybody. So imagine everybody's facing forward. They don't realize I'm standing behind them.
Right.
In this big house.
Right. So I told them the story of a year ago, or not a year ago. Well, actually, a year ago, I was up at Park City. At that point, it actually was a year ago. Lori and I had decided. Then we came back to the elders. Elders prayed for a few months. Then we introduced it in January, how we'd gone through the search committee. And then literally, I'm looking at them and saying, and so here's what I want you to know. We have found our new senior pastor, and I want to introduce you to him. His name's Eric Geiger. And people are just going, their jaws are dropping. And then you walked around.
I literally walk up.
I did, and I introduced you, and you crushed it, because I introduced them. I told them why I loved you. Remember, Lori actually, every time, Lori was a part of it.
That's
and
right.
Lori talked about why she thought you were such a good choice. So we honored them both, and they got to hear from me what I loved about you. They got to hear from Lori what they loved about you. And I think you and Kay came up at front.
And my daughters.
And daughters. And you crushed it, because you had actually memorized, I think, all their names.
I knew. At one point, I had known all their names. In that moment, the pressure of the moment, I'm sure I'm forgetting some. But
I'm not sure I even knew all their names at that
you
point.
did not know all the names.
but it was great, and you crushed it. You crushed it, because
thank you.
as you go through a process like we've defined, you were such the right person, you crushed that moment. And so you stood up, you affirmed them, you told a little bit of your story and your journey and how you came to yes. So they got to hear that, which was what was most important. But then you got to be with them relationally, where you really weren't their boss yet.
Right.
But I also said to them, if you remember, I said my office is literally being deconstructed now.
I wrote that down right here
Yeah.
because I thought that was one of the strong things you said. That would have definitely been a hard turn.
Yeah.
You said, when we go back, I will no longer be in my office.
Right. I said, we had hired somebody to come in and work with you to design a new office. So so my office, the senior pastor office, wasn't Kenton's office anymore. It was Eric's office. So that everything about it was, here's Eric. Eric is your new boss.
Yeah.
This is the senior pastor. Kenton is in a whole different situation and in a different role. So it gave them the opportunity to move at you. And of course, everybody did it a different way. Some, had the energy, they'd move at you, they'd right away. Some of them more insecure, pulling back, but they had enough days that they could find a way to connect with you, to find with Kay or with your daughters. Yeah. And however they did it, it created this beautiful moment of relationship where they got to know you.
It was genius. I trusted you because I had learned to trust you through the process, but I thought it was so abrupt,
It was.
But now I see all the wisdom. The week, so it wasn't just that day, it was then the whole week of that pastor retreat. What you hoped happened did happen. My daughters were more excited to move after the retreat, which was great. I felt I had some early relationships with people on the team that I still enjoy today, and it was great. The announcement of you saying, "Hey, my office," and just so you know, you may be wondering what happened to kick Kenton out of his office. No, we actually have him in another office off-site, which is our way of blessing the further ministry of Kenton Beshore as he mentors pastors. At the same time, I think
it was the best thing.
I think we're just going to be transparent on it.
Well, yeah,
it's hard for you if you were around.
It would have been terrible.
Well, you
because people would walk in and they would want to. Things were moving forward and things would happen, and somebody would have walked in and said, "Hey, this happened," and all I had to do was look confused, and they would have taken it in a way that it should never be. And the other side is, I didn't want to be around all the offices. It wasn't good for me. And it's too easy for the staff to treat me the way they used to treat me. They needed to have a different relationship with me. And so me being offsite was one of the best decisions for me personally, and I think for the staff. It helped them because then they couldn't trip themselves up.
Right. No, that's good. Okay, so that was the first announcement to the staff.
So then you came, you moved here. Yeah. Then in September, then it was the same kind of a hard pass with the elders. I had talked to you and I said, I'm happy to come to any elder meetings you want me to. I'll do as many as you want me to so you can see the way that I did elder meetings. But as soon as you're comfortable with that, I don't want to come to them anymore.
So we're talking at this point about the directional elders, not the shepherd elders. So just so you know, at Mariners, there's directional elders. I'm one of those. There's 8 right now. And then there's shepherding elders, which we have like 180 shepherding elders. And the shepherding elders and their wives, they do hospital visits, they lead memorials and or funerals, and weddings and elder prayer. Mm-hmm. They pray with people after those people have confessed faith in Jesus. They do child dedication. So a lot of pastoral type of shepherding. That's the shepherding elders. The directional elders you could think of as the board of elders. So Kenton was meeting with them at that time every other week. I've subsequently changed it to once a month.
Right.
But that first meeting with the elders, obviously they knew me because they hired me.
Right. And so even that was a really hard right turn for them. I said, I no longer am the senior pastor. I am here only at Eric's request. None of you can request me to be here. I'll never be here on your request. But I said, I'm here for Eric. I'll be here, as long as Eric wants me. I think I went to 2 meetings and that was enough.
I think we had you through the rest of that calendar year.
That long?
Yeah. So which was maybe in 3 or 4 meetings.
Yeah, not a lot.
And you helped me also. You had a meeting every other week with the chairman, and you did that for a while as well.
Handed off that.
And that was, I liked having you there during those times because I was able to watch how you interacted, but I also was able to ask questions after.
Right.
Like, hey, should I have engaged in that, or do I let that decision just be out of my hands? And you were able to give your insight. I mean, you had led elders at Marriage Church for 35 years.
Right.
So I wanted to learn big time from that.
Well, and at least understand the system, and then anything that you would want to change, at least you understood what was there, why it was there, and that helps people because then they can go, as long as you understand what we do and why we do it, if you want to change it, that's okay. But you spent some time to understand it,
Totally.
And I think you honored them in that way. So with the elders and with the staff, it was more important in my mind that they understood that the roles had radically changed and that my role was not what it was anymore. And that was important for me and important for them. So roles changed, responsibilities have changed, there's no going back, clear handoff.
Yeah.
Eric's got the baton moving forward. Then with the church, it was much more graceful. And that's to your credit because you could have done it either. I offered whatever you wanted, but I said, I am willing to keep teaching a little bit on Sunday mornings.
Yeah.
I had a series planned. I said, I'll do the series. You can do it all. You can do none of it. You can change it, whatever you want to do. And I think what you decided to do,
I jumped into your series. Yeah,
you did. And you said, I'd like to teach in these. But it was fun because the joke with the church was, we introduced you. So you came in. So it was Kay and Eric and Lori and Kenton. And again, we introduced you and said there's a decision. We, talked about how it was going to happen. But again, I think the introduction was 5-10 minutes in a service.
Yeah, it was,
because
we did a Sunday night thing for if you wanted more. But the introduction to the service was really kind of
just short.
It was a short introduction
because we said we're going to give them Jesus.
That's right.
We're going to do this. You're going to get to meet Eric. So again, it's got that mindset of show, not tell.
Yeah.
So it was like Eric's the new senior pastor. And then the next week I'm teaching again. And I go, why is the old guy here if the new guy's here? And then I think
2 more weeks.
Yeah, 2 more weeks.
Yeah.
Which then it became funny
and
fun for me because it's like,
wait,
where's the new guy? How come it's there? So it felt way more gentle than when you spoke. It was, Kenton and then Eric and then Kenton and Eric and then Eric and Eric and then Kenton. And they didn't feel like they were losing anything. They just got an ad. They still had me and they had you. Now, that was your choice because I did not make that choice prior, nor did I negotiate for that. It was whatever you want, we'll do it.
And I did want it that way. And this will go in a little bit to the next episode, which we'll talk about how the new leader, which was me, assesses the situation. But here's a little bit of a teaser, an appetizer for it. I assessed the situation, the context of Mariners Church at the time, as a sustained success, not as a turnaround, not as a startup, not as it needs to have bold, decisive leadership, but no, it needs to be this is not a perfect church. No church is perfect, no organization is perfect, but a healthy church, and it needs some grace, some gracious shepherding, honoring of the past, and I had already concluded that I would love if you stayed on. If I didn't want you to stay on, of course I wouldn't have had you speak those for 2 straight weeks. But because I wanted you to be one of our teaching pastors and to still be on our team, I thought it would serve our church so well if they didn't feel like they were losing or missing Kenton, but that they were getting another pastor. And so now,
and that's to your credit because that couldn't have been easy for you. The people were comfortable with me.
They were.
You were new. So that took a great sense of self-awareness, self-confidence on your part to say, I can do this. Yeah. And I think the church saw that in you, and you won because of that.
I think, now the goal for me wasn't to gain credibility, but I look after, because I had several high-level leaders in our church come and tell me how much it meant to them. One of them, for example, Terry Donahue, who was the head football coach at UCLA for many years. He would come. He was so encouraging. He passed away in the last year, but he was so kind and encouraging. And he said, the fact that you wanted Kenton around, it said so much to me about you.
Yeah.
And so I thought, wow, that has mattered. It gave me credibility with people. Now, that's not the reason I did it. The reason I did it was I always have believed that it's going to take more than one pastor to shepherd the people. And yes, you need a lead pastor or a senior pastor, but I was totally fine with you being a group's favorite, just because I want those people shepherded or pastored more than I want to be the favorite,
Right.
Anyway, I thought that, so to your term, that was more of a soft transition.
Very soft. And the church experienced it soft. And then with the shepherding elders, it was softer because there was a big dinner where we introduced you and Kay, your kids, and it was just a big fun celebration.
It was relational.
Yeah.
I shared my testimony at that. So I think if I'm just giving some coaching to a new leader, so the staff was more, they obviously were wondering what kind of directional changes is this person going to make. So I spoke a lot about how I loved the church, how I loved the doctrine of the church, how I was so thrilled with what I've seen God do at Mariners Church, how I loved Rooted and our recovery ministry, and I was excited about our kids ministry. I mean, I wanted them to hear that Eric loves Mariners, right? And then with the shepherding elders, the goal for me was I want them to know that this man loves his God, loves his family, and is going to love us.
Yeah.
So it was even more only relational vibe, while the staff was relational but a bit of strategic, yet connecting to the strategy of Mariners that I already loved.
Yeah, and it was good because the staff, it's their jobs, it's
That's
their
right.
occupation. The elders, it's all relationship. It's their church. Do you love us? And so you handled that beautifully. I think that worked great.
So let's talk about the goal of the announcement to the church. So the goal of the staff and the elders, the board of elders, that was definitely more a change is here. Boom, it's happened. The goal with the church turned out to be a softer turn. Mm-hmm. But when it comes to that week, that very first week, what did you want to see happen? And what would you suggest that a church or even organization sees happen? I mean, it was, like you said, a 5 to 10 minute announcement. Mm-hmm. What was the win of that? What did you want to see me accomplish, the church feel or know? What should the person making the announcement, what do they want the win of that moment to be?
Right. So the number one win is the story. And it has to be a God story. Okay. It can't be a personality story. So the story in the announcement isn't, oh my gosh, Kenton and Lori are going away, or, oh my gosh, we've got to transition. It's really the story of God leading. So started way back. There's always going to be some transition. We talked about that a year ago. This is how God led. We've all been praying. We had a group of people that looked, this is what they did. And this is how God's led. And now God has led, and this is Eric and Kay. And this is why they match us so well. And the idea, again, is to show, not tell. So we needed to, in the story needed to sing. It had to be great just by itself. It had to go, look at this, look at how God has done all these things, how God's led us. So it was a story about God. And then that was the first. And then the second thing was it had to be a story about Eric and Kay, not Kenton and Lori, because Eric and Kay are the future. So the all great stories begin with an ending. So Lori and Kenton's ending had happened. We had worked with the church in that sense of, we're done. And so we're finished and we're not going away, but our season is now coming to an end. So that was done and that was closed. But now there was a beginning. And so now as they looked at it, again, the key moment was Kenton as I said it, the feeling was the church is going to go, well, of course you're going to say that they're great because, that's been part of it. But then they looked at Lori, and Lori's blessing was really the sense of authenticity. And even Lori goes, because the church knows her and they know it's like, we're going to get the truth from you. So Lori's blessing of you and Kay. And then really the third thing then is Eric and Kay's heart. And literally what we did, I don't know if you remembered it, but it was like we angled Kay's heart's a little better than yours.
It was back then, and it still is.
That's right. Yeah. But really wanted Kay to shine, because you, of course, will shine. And as you speak, you get to shine.
I'll have more opportunities.
Right. So we wanted to actually, Kay was a huge part of it. And really, Kay was a huge part of the interview process.
She's the best.
And so it was like, we felt like that was putting the best foot forward, because then you would win. So that was kind of in order what we wanted to do, and tell a great story, and feeling like that's it. Woo, here we go.
So that was at that time we had 3 weekend services, 1 Saturday, 2 Sunday, and then there was the Sunday night.
Right.
And then on Sunday night, you and Lori and Kay and me sat around a table.
Right.
There was a little bit of worship. I remember you showed up in shorts.
Because I'm fun.
Yeah, it was fun. But it definitely then sent right away a casual, like, hey, this is us, this is family.
We'll just talk.
We'll just talk. And it was the room was full that night. I mean, there was a lot of people.
But it wasn't a performance, and it wasn't planned. They could just say, we're just going to talk in front of you, and here's what it is. And
then you asked questions. And so people had emailed in questions. And so now I just want to get practical. Because obviously there's going to be hard questions that are asked. There's going to be softball questions that are asked. You don't want to just avoid the hard questions, but you also want the night to be an inspirational night. What would you say to the moderator of those questions? So someone else is listening to this. They're going to do the announcement. They're going to do a Q&A with the future leader. What questions should they be tossing the leader? What questions, like, don't ask the leader that in front of everybody.
Right. So what I had is, I was the one that was doing all the questioning. So I had control of the cards. So my approach, I haven't ever thought of it before, but I guess my thinking would be, just as a father is to a family, you want to talk through things. You're going to be absolutely transparent and be totally honest. But the way you word things and how you're going to say them are going to be very different. So what I could do is, some people just don't know how to ask a question. And it betrays a heart that's, they're hurting. And so you can read in it.
You could tell there's a question beneath the question.
Yeah, and they're hurting, and they're making a statement in their question. And so you can't read that.
Right.
But you can take that and then flip it and go, oh, here's 2 or 3 people who have the same question, and reframe it so that it's gracious, it's positive, and then it gives you the opportunity to speak about what you want to speak about. The most important thing for that night is the church got to know you. They got to see you. They got to see you. They got to see your relationship with Kay, how you react. You've got a brilliant mind. So, any questions that, you're so thoughtful. So I tried to ask some questions that I knew would highlight, and people would go, wow, he's thoughtful. But then your relationship with Kay was really important to me. And so the way that you honor her, how you've invested in your marriage, you have a story about the time it took for you to get pregnant.
Yep.
I think that was an important story. So I had a bunch of things that impressed me going through the interview. So I'm going to look for the things that made me like you.
That's great.
And I wanted to highlight those things, along with the questions that people generally had. But I wasn't going to read anything that was going to be anything but positive.
I felt that way. I mean, I imagined it was going to be that way, but the whole time I felt Kenton is helping me win.
Right.
He's helping me gain credibility with the church, which I'm super thankful. All right, so let me wrap up, and I think here's just a couple thoughts for you as a leader, whether you're going to be the person who is the successor or you're planning the process of succession. Think in waves of communication. So for us, it was staff, elders, church as a whole. So think in waves, start with what group needs to hear first, then second, then third, then fourth, and so on. So map out the waves of communication. And then what is a win or a goal for each of the environments or the places where that communication takes place? And so, as Kenton shared in the early ones, it was to give a signal that a new day has come. It is a hard transition. Boom, things are different now. With the church as a whole, that wasn't the goal. The goal was for this to be a beautiful, seamless transition, for the people to be well loved and cared for them to sense that they still had Kenton and they were going to have me, and that this was a beautiful God story. So I think knowing what you want to accomplish in each place of communication is really important. Well, the announcement, hope this has been helpful. It is a critical moment. There's been so much work that has gone into succession, and obviously you want all of that work to bear beautiful fruit in how the announcement is made. Thanks for joining us on this episode.
You know, if you listen to the podcast, you know that I love research. I used to lead a research company. So I love when research helps to illustrate a question we have. And one of the questions a lot of people are having is, how do we look to the decline of the family, maybe the relationship around fatherhood and issues of faith and church? Well, again, the Communio nationwide study on faith and relationships actually points to the collapse of marriage, where resident fatherhood fits into that, and how they all point ultimately to a relationship to Christianity and decline in the church. So visit communio.org/study to download Communio's nationwide study on faith and relationships.